Maya Rodriguez wiped the sweat from her forehead as she finished cleaning the last table in the small downtown cafe where she worked. The clock on the wall showed 11:47 p.m., and her feet ached from standing for 12 hours straight. At 23, she had already been working 2 jobs for 3 years, trying to support her sick mother and pay for her own night school classes. The cafe was nearly empty except for one customer who sat in the corner booth, hunched over his laptop. Maya had noticed him earlier, an older man in an expensive suit who seemed stressed and kept checking his phone. Most customers left by 10 p.m., but this one had been there since 8 p.m., ordering nothing but black coffee. "Sir, we're closing soon," Maya said politely as she approached his table with a fresh pot of coffee. "Would you like one more refill before we lock up?" The man looked up, and Maya was surprised to see how tired his eyes looked despite his well-groomed appearance. His silver hair was perfectly styled, and his watch looked like it cost more than Maya made in a year. But something about his expression seemed troubled. "Thank you," he said quietly, pushing his cup forward. "I'm sorry for staying so late. I needed somewhere quiet to think." Maya poured the coffee carefully. She had learned to read people during her years in customer service, and this man seemed like he was carrying a heavy burden. "No problem at all, sir. Take your time." As she turned to walk away, the man suddenly stood up quickly. Too quickly. Maya watched in slow motion as his face went pale, his eyes rolled back, and he began to collapse toward the hard tile floor. Without thinking, Maya dropped the coffee pot and lunged forward, catching the man just before his head hit the ground. The hot coffee splattered across the floor, but Maya didn't care. The man was unconscious and heavy in her arms. Sir, can you hear me?" Maya called out as she gently lowered him to the floor. Her first aid training from her other job at the community center kicked in immediately. She checked his pulse. It was there, but weak and irregular. Maya's co-worker, Tommy, came running from behind the counter. "What happened? Should I call 911? "Yes, call them right now," Maya said, staying calm despite her racing heart. She positioned the man on his side in the recovery position and loosened his tie to help him breathe better. "Tell them we have an unconscious man, possible heart problem." While Tommy made the call, Maya stayed with the man, monitoring his breathing and pulse. She noticed his skin was clammy and his lips had a slight blue tint. These were signs she remembered from her basic medical training course. The man's eyes fluttered open after a few minutes. He looked confused and tried to sit up immediately. "Sir, be quiet," Maya said firmly but gently, placing a steadying hand on his shoulder. "Please don't move. You just collapsed, and an ambulance is coming. Just lie still and breathe slowly." "I'm fine," the man protested weakly, but Maya could see he was far from fine. His hands were shaking, and he was struggling to focus his eyes. "With respect, sir, you're not fine," Maya replied. "I've seen this before when I volunteer at the senior center. You need medical attention. Please just rest until the paramedics get here." The man looked at Maya with surprise. Most people his age and social status weren't used to being told what to do by a young woman in work clothes. But something in Maya's calm, confident manner made him listen. "What's your name?" Maya asked, trying to keep him conscious and alert. "Richard," he said quietly. "Richard Blackstone." Maya had heard that name before, but couldn't place it immediately. She was more focused on keeping Richard stable until help arrived. "Maya," she said. "Richard, can you tell me if you're taking any medications? Do you have any health conditions I should tell the paramedics about?" Richard closed his eyes for a moment. "Heart medication. Beta blockers. High blood pressure pills. They're in my jacket pocket." Maya carefully reached into his jacket and found a small pharmacy bag with several prescription bottles. She read the labels quickly. They were all for serious heart conditions and blood pressure problems. The ambulance sirens grew louder outside, and soon paramedics rushed through the cafe door. Maya quickly explained what she had observed: the collapse, the weak pulse, the medications she had found, and Richard's current condition. "Good work," said the lead paramedic, a woman about Maya's age. "You probably saved him from a serious head injury when he fell, and keeping him calm was exactly right." As the paramedics checked Richard's vital signs and prepared to transport him, he reached out and grabbed Maya's hand. "Thank you," he whispered. You didn't have to help me. Maya squeezed his hand gently. Of course I did. Anyone would have done the same thing. But Richard looked at her with an expression that suggested not everyone would have reacted the same way. What hospital will they take me to? He asked. St. Mary's. One of the paramedics answered. It's the closest one with a cardiac unit. Richard nodded and looked back at Maya. I work for Blackstone Industries. If anyone calls asking about me, please tell them I'm at St. Mary's. Maya nodded, though she still didn't fully understand who Richard Blackstone was or why it might matter. After the ambulance left, Maya and Tommy spent an hour cleaning up the spilled coffee and filling out an incident report for their manager. The cafe owner, Mrs. Chun, arrived after Tommy called her about what happened. You did good, Maya, Mrs. Chun said as she looked over the report. That man could have been seriously hurt if you hadn't caught him. I just hope he's okay, Maya replied, genuinely concerned about Richard's well-being. Mrs. Chun studied Maya for a moment. You know who that was, don't you? Maya shook her head. He said his name was Richard Blackstone. He seemed like a businessman. Maya, Richard Blackstone owns half the buildings in this city, Mrs. Chun explained. He's one of the richest men in the state. His company employs thousands of people. If something had happened to him here, Maya felt a chill run down her spine. She hadn't helped Richard because of who he was. She had helped him because he was a human being who needed assistance. But now she understood why he had looked so surprised when she took charge of the situation. I didn't know, Maya said honestly. I would have helped him the same way no matter who he was. Mrs. Chin smiled. That's exactly why what you did was so special, Maya. You saw someone who needed help, and you helped them. No questions asked. The next morning, Maya woke up in her small apartment after only 4 hours of sleep. She had to be at her second job at the community center by 8 a.m., helping coordinate programs for elderly residents. As she got dressed in her other uniform, khaki pants, and a polo shirt with the center's logo, she thought about Richard Blackstone. Maya wondered if he was feeling better and whether the doctors had been able to help him. She had seen similar episodes when she worked with elderly clients at the community center, and she knew how serious heart problems could be. At the community center, Maya threw herself into her work, helping elderly residents with their morning exercise programs and organizing their medications. It was demanding work, but Maya loved helping people, especially the older adults who reminded her of her grandmother who had passed away 2 years earlier. During her lunch break, Maya sat in the community center's small break room and pulled out her textbooks. She was studying business administration at night school, hoping to eventually get a degree and find better-paying work. The books were secondhand and marked up by previous students, but Maya didn't mind. Education was her way out of poverty, and she was determined to make it work. Her phone buzzed with a text from her mother. Doctor appointment went well today. Thank you for paying for it, Mija. Love you. Maya smiled despite her exhaustion. Her mother had been diagnosed with diabetes the previous year, and the medical bills had been overwhelming. Between her mother's healthcare costs, rent, groceries, and school expenses, Maya barely had enough money left over each month for bus fare. But she never complained. Maya had learned early in life that complaining didn't solve problems, action did. And taking action meant working hard, staying focused, and helping others whenever possible. After work at the community center, Maya had just enough time to grab a quick dinner at home before heading to her evening classes. Tonight was accounting, which was challenging but important for her business degree. As she hurried to catch the bus to campus, Maya's phone rang. The number wasn't familiar, but she answered anyway. Is this Maya Rodriguez? Asked a professional-sounding woman's voice. Yes, this is Maya. Who's calling? My name is Sarah Collins. I'm calling on behalf of Richard Blackstone. He asked me to contact you about what happened last night at the cafe. Maya felt her stomach flutter with nervousness. Is he okay? How is he feeling? Mr. Blackstone is doing much better, thanks to your quick thinking, Sarah said warmly. The doctors said that if he had hit his head when he collapsed, he could have suffered serious brain damage. You quite literally saved his life. I'm so glad he's recovering, Maya said, feeling relieved. I was worried about him all day. Mr. Blackstone would like to thank you properly, Sarah continued. Would it be possible for you to visit him at the hospital tomorrow? He's in the VIP wing at St. Mary's. Maya hesitated. She had classes during the day and work at night, but Something in Sarah's voice suggested this was important. Maya arrived at St. Mary's Hospital 15 minutes early, still wearing her khaki uniform from the community center. The lobby was impressive, marble floors, fresh flowers, and soft classical music playing overhead. She felt underdressed among the well-appointed visitors, but she reminded herself that she had every right to be there. At the information desk, a polite receptionist directed Maya to the elevator that would take her to the VIP wing on the 8th floor. As the elevator climbed, Maya smoothed down her work polo shirt and checked her reflection in the polished steel doors. The 8th floor was unlike any hospital ward Maya had ever seen. Instead of the typical sterile hallways and harsh fluorescent lighting, this area looked more like a luxury hotel. Soft carpet, artwork on the walls, and natural lighting from large windows created a calming atmosphere. Sarah Collins was waiting for Maya at the nurse's station, a professional woman in her 40s wearing a sharp business suit. She greeted Maya with a warm smile and a firm handshake. "Maya, thank you so much for coming," Sarah said. "Mr. Blackstone has been looking forward to meeting you properly. How are you feeling today?" "I'm fine, thank you," Maya replied, though she felt slightly nervous about the upcoming conversation. "How is Mr. Blackstone doing?" "Much better. The doctors were able to adjust his medications, and his heart rhythm has stabilized," Sarah explained as they walked down a quiet hallway. "But, Maya, I want you to know that the doctors confirmed what we suspected. If you hadn't caught him when he fell, he very likely would have suffered a traumatic brain injury that could have been fatal." Maya felt a wave of emotion at those words. She had acted on instinct, but hearing about the potential consequences made her realize how important that split-second decision had been. They stopped at a door marked Private Suite, and Sarah knocked gently before opening it. "Mr. Blackstone, Maya Rodriguez is here to see you." The room was spacious and comfortable, with a sitting area separate from the hospital bed. Richard Blackstone was dressed in a hospital gown but sitting in a reclining chair by the window, looking much more alert than he had the night before. When he saw Maya, his face brightened considerably. "Maya," he said, starting to stand up. "Please don't get up on my account," Maya said quickly, moving toward him. "How are you feeling, Mr. Blackstone?" "So much better, thanks to you," Richard replied, settling back into his chair. "Please sit down. Sarah, could you give us a few minutes alone?" Sarah nodded and stepped out, closing the door behind her. Richard looked at Maya intently. "I've been thinking about what happened last night, and I need you to understand something. In my world, most people who might have seen me collapse would have immediately thought about liability, lawsuits, or what they could get out of the situation. You didn't hesitate for even a second. You just helped." Maya felt uncomfortable with the praise. "Mr. Blackstone, anyone would have done the same thing. You needed help, so I helped. That's just basic human decency." Richard shook his head slowly. "Maya, I've lived long enough to know that's not true. Basic human decency isn't as common as you might think, especially when there's a big difference in social class between people." Maya shifted in her chair. She wasn't used to conversations about social class or wealth differences. In her world, people were just people. Some had more money than others, but that didn't change how you treated them. "Can I ask you something?" Richard continued. "What's your story, Maya? What are your goals in life?" Maya hesitated. She wasn't sure why Richard wanted to know about her personal life, but something about his genuine interest made her feel comfortable sharing. "I work 2 jobs right now," Maya began. "Days at a community center helping elderly residents, and nights at the cafe where we met. I'm also going to school part-time studying business administration. My goal is to get a degree and eventually start my own business helping seniors with daily living services." Richard raised his eyebrows. "That's quite an ambitious schedule. What motivated you to choose that field?" "My grandmother," Maya said, her voice softening. "She passed away 2 years ago, but I spent a lot of time taking care of her when she got sick. I saw how hard it was for her to get the help she needed, especially because she didn't have much money. There are so many elderly people who need assistance, but can't afford quality care." Richard nodded thoughtfully. "And what kind of business are you planning to start?" Maya's eyes lit up as she talked about her dream. "I want to create an affordable service that helps seniors stay in their own homes instead of having to move to expensive assisted living facilities. Things like meal preparation, medication management, transportation to appointments, light housework, The kind of support that makes the difference between independence and institutionalization. That's a wonderful goal, Richard said sincerely. How close are you to finishing your degree? I have about 18 months left, assuming I can keep paying for classes, Maya admitted. It's challenging to balance everything, but I'm determined to make it work. Richard was quiet for a moment, looking out the window at the city skyline. When he turned back to Maya, his expression was serious. Maya, I want to tell you something about myself that might help you understand why last night was so significant to me. My name is Richard Blackstone, and I'm the CEO of Blackstone Industries. We're a major real estate development and investment company. I've spent 40 years building this business from nothing. Maya nodded politely, still not fully grasping the scale of what Richard was describing. Last night, I was at that cafe because I had just come from the worst business meeting of my life, Richard continued. I was being forced out of my own company by my business partners and my own son. They claimed I was getting too old, that my health problems made me a liability. The stress of fighting them had been affecting my heart condition. Maya felt a surge of sympathy. I'm so sorry, Mr. Blackstone. That must have been devastating. It was, Richard said quietly. I was sitting in that cafe feeling completely defeated, wondering if they were right about me being past my prime. And then I collapsed, and this young woman I'd never met risked her own safety to help me. You didn't know who I was or whether I could do anything for you in return. You just saw someone who needed help. Maya wasn't sure how to respond to this level of personal disclosure. I hope things work out better with your business situation, she said gently. Richard smiled, and for the first time since Maya had met him, he looked truly relaxed. That's actually what I wanted to talk to you about. Maya, what you did last night reminded me of something I'd forgotten after years in the corporate world. You reminded me that there are still people who do the right thing simply because it's right. Mr. Blackstone, I appreciate what you're saying, but please, let me finish, Richard interrupted gently. I've made a decision about my company. Instead of letting them push me out, I'm going to fight back. But I want to do it differently this time. I want to build something meaningful, something that actually helps people instead of just making money. Maya listened carefully, not sure where this conversation was heading. I'm planning to start a new division of my company focused on affordable senior services and housing, Richard continued. Exactly the kind of work you described wanting to do. Maya, I'd like you to consider coming to work for me. Maya's jaw dropped. Mr. Blackstone, I don't know what to say. I'm honored, but I'm not qualified for that kind of position. I don't even have my degree yet. You have something more valuable than credentials, Richard replied. You have genuine caring for people, quick thinking under pressure, and the kind of character that can't be taught in business school. Everything else can be learned. Maya's mind was racing. This seemed too good to be true. What kind of work would I be doing? You'd start as a project coordinator, helping me develop our senior services program. You'd research best practices, visit existing facilities, interview seniors and their families about their needs. You'd help design services that actually work for people who can't afford luxury care. Maya felt overwhelmed. Mr. Blackstone, this is incredibly generous, but I need to finish my education. And I can't abandon my current jobs. People depend on me. Richard held up his hand. Maya, I'm not asking you to abandon anything. This would be a full-time position with a salary that would allow you to quit your other jobs and focus on finishing your degree. We'd pay for you to complete your education, and you could do much of your coursework during company time since it directly relates to the work we'd be doing. Maya stared at Richard in disbelief. This opportunity seemed like something out of a dream, but she had learned to be cautious about offers that seemed too good to be true. Why me? Maya asked directly. You could hire someone with experience, someone with connections in the senior care industry. Richard leaned forward in his chair. Because, Maya, most people with experience in this industry got that experience working for companies that prioritize profit over people. You're starting fresh, with the right motivations and the right instincts. Plus, you understand what it's like to struggle financially. That perspective is invaluable when designing services for people who can't afford expensive care. Maya sat quietly for several minutes, trying to process everything Richard had told her. This could be the opportunity that would change her entire life trajectory. But it also seemed risky to put all her trust in someone she had just met. Can I ask you something honestly? Maya said finally. Of course. How do I know this isn't just a temporary gesture of gratitude? What if you change your mind once you're feeling better? Or what if your family convinces you this is a bad idea? Richard smiled appreciatively. That's exactly the kind of smart question I would hope you'd ask. Maya, I'm going to be completely transparent with you. My son and my business partners are going to hate this decision. They're going to see it as proof that I've lost my mind. But that's exactly why I know it's the right choice. Richard reached for a folder on the table beside his chair and handed it to Maya. These are the preliminary documents for the new division. I've been thinking about this for months, but last night gave me the courage to actually move forward. This isn't a spur-of-the-moment decision based on gratitude. It's a business plan I believe in. Maya opened the folder and saw detailed financial projections, market research, and organizational charts. This was clearly a serious business proposition, not a charitable gesture. Maya, I'm 71 years old, Richard said quietly. I've made more money than I could spend in several lifetimes. But I've never built anything that I was truly proud of from a human perspective. This is my chance to create a legacy that actually matters. Maya looked up from the documents. And you really think I could help with something this important? I don't just think you could help, Richard said firmly. I think you're exactly what this project needs to succeed. Maya felt tears forming in her eyes. This conversation was Maya rode the bus home in a daze, clutching the folder of business documents and Richard's business card. The conversation at the hospital felt surreal, like something that happened to other people in movies, not to someone like her. She kept replaying Richard's words, trying to convince herself that the opportunity was real. When Maya arrived at her small apartment, her mother, Elena, was sitting at the kitchen table sorting through medical bills. Elena Rodriguez was 58 years old, but looked older due to years of hard physical work and recent health struggles. When she saw Maya's expression, she immediately set down her paperwork. Mija, what's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost. Maya sat down across from her mother and carefully explained everything that had happened, from Richard's collapse at the cafe to the incredible job offer at the hospital. Elena listened without interruption, her eyes growing wider with each detail. Let me understand this correctly, Elena said when Maya finished. This man wants to pay you a full salary to help elderly people, pay for the rest of your college, and give you experience in business management? That's what he said, Maya replied, still feeling uncertain. But, Mama, what if it's too good to be true? What if he changes his mind? Or what if I'm not smart enough for this kind of work? Elena reached across the table and took Maya's hands in hers. Mija, listen to me carefully. I have watched you work harder than anyone should have to work just to keep us afloat. I have seen you study until 3 in the morning after working 12-hour days. I have watched you help elderly people at the community center with more patience and kindness than nurses with 20 years of experience. Maya felt tears forming in her eyes as her mother continued. You think you saved this man's life at the cafe, but maybe he's here to save yours too. Maybe this is God's way of rewarding you for all the good you've done for other people. But what if I fail? Maya whispered. What if I take this chance and I mess it up? Elena smiled, the same smile that had comforted Maya through childhood fears and teenage doubts. Then, you fail trying to do something meaningful instead of failing from never trying at all. Maya, you've been carrying the weight of our family on your shoulders for 3 years. Maybe it's time to let someone help carry that weight with you. That evening, Maya couldn't concentrate on her homework. She kept reading through the business documents Richard had given her, trying to understand the scope of what he was planning. The proposed senior services division would start with a modest budget of $5 million and grow from there based on success metrics. The business plan outlined services that aligned perfectly with Maya's own dreams: affordable in-home care, transportation services, meal programs, and housing assistance for seniors who wanted to age in place rather than move to expensive facilities. It was exactly what Maya had hoped to build someday, but on a scale she never could have imagined achieving on her own. Maya's phone buzzed with a text from her supervisor at the community center. Maya, Mrs. Patterson fell today and broke her hip. Her daughter can't afford to take time off work to help her. Can you work extra hours this week? Maya immediately typed back, of course. I'll be there early tomorrow. As she hit send, Maya realized this was exactly the kind of situation Richard's new division could help address. Mrs. Patterson was 86 years old and lived alone in a small apartment. Her Social Security barely covered rent and groceries, leaving nothing for additional care when health problems arose. Her daughter worked 2 jobs and couldn't afford to hire professional help. Maya had seen this scenario dozens of times during her work at the community center. Elderly people fell through the cracks of the healthcare system because they had too much income to qualify for government assistance, but not enough money to pay for private care. They ended up in emergency rooms, then expensive nursing homes, when what they really needed was affordable support to stay safely in their own homes. The next morning, Maya arrived at the community center an hour early to spend extra time with Mrs. Patterson. The elderly woman was back from the hospital with her leg in a cast, frustrated and scared about how she would manage basic tasks like grocery shopping and cleaning. "Maya, I don't know what I'm going to do," Mrs. Patterson said, tears in her eyes. "My daughter wants to help, but she can't miss work or she'll lose her job, and I can't afford to hire someone to come help me." As Maya helped Mrs. Patterson organize her medications and prepare a simple breakfast, she thought about Richard's business plan. The proposed services would include exactly what Mrs. Patterson needed: affordable meal preparation, light housekeeping, medication management, and transportation assistance. "Mrs. Patterson," Maya said carefully, "what if there was a service that could help you for just a few hours each day, something you could afford on your Social Security income?" Mrs. Patterson's eyes brightened. "That would be a miracle, dear. But I've called every agency in the city. Either they're too expensive or they have waiting lists 6 months long." Maya spent her lunch break walking around the neighborhood surrounding the community center. It was a working-class area where many elderly residents lived on fixed incomes. Maya counted at least 12 apartment buildings that housed seniors, plus several small houses where older adults lived alone. She began to envision how Richard's services could work in practice. Instead of having individual caregivers drive all over the city to visit isolated clients, they could establish a hub in neighborhoods like this one. Caregivers could efficiently serve multiple clients within walking distance, keeping costs down while building genuine relationships with the people they served. Maya pulled out her phone and called Richard's direct number. "Maya," Richard's voice was warm with surprise. "I wasn't expecting to hear from you so soon. How are you?" "I'm well, Mr. Blackstone. I wanted to ask you something about the business plan. Are you thinking about establishing neighborhood-based service centers, or would this be more of a city-wide service model?" Richard was quiet for a moment. "That's a very strategic question, Maya. What's your thinking on that?" Maya explained her observations about the community center's neighborhood and her ideas about hub-based service delivery. Richard listened intently, occasionally asking clarifying questions about costs, logistics, and client needs. "Maya, that's brilliant," Richard said when she finished. "I was thinking about this from a traditional business perspective: central office, workers dispatched across the city. But your neighborhood hub model would be more efficient and more personal. Have you ever considered that you might have a natural talent for business strategy?" Maya felt a flush of pride, followed immediately by self-doubt. "Mr. Blackstone, I'm just thinking about what would work for people like Mrs. Patterson. I don't know anything about business strategy. Understanding what customers need and figuring out how to deliver it efficiently. That's exactly what business strategy is," Richard replied. "Maya, have you made a decision about the job offer?" Maya took a deep breath. "I'd like to say yes, but I need to know more about what would be expected of me, and I need to understand how this would work with my school schedule. Would you be available to meet tomorrow evening? I'd like to introduce you to some people who could answer your questions better than I can." Maya agreed to meet Richard at his office the following day at 6 p.m. After hanging up, she felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness that made it hard to focus on her afternoon responsibilities at the community center. That evening, Maya worked her shift at the cafe, but her mind kept wandering to tomorrow's meeting. Her coworker Tommy noticed her distraction during the slow period after 9 p.m. "Maya, you've been different since that guy collapsed here," Tommy observed. "What's going on?" Maya decided to tell Tommy about Richard's job offer, though she left out the details about Richard's wealth and business empire. Tommy listened with growing amazement. "So let me get this straight," Tommy said. "You saved some dude's life, and now he wants to hire you to start a business doing exactly what you've always wanted to do." "That's the basic idea," Maya replied. "But, Tommy, what if I'm not ready for something like this? What if I'm better off sticking with what I know? Tommy shook his head firmly. Maya, in the 2 years I've worked with you, I've watched you handle every crazy situation that walks through that door. You can calm down angry customers. You can manage medical emergencies. You can solve problems that would stress out people with way more experience than you have. Maya appreciated Tommy's confidence, but she still felt overwhelmed by the magnitude of the opportunity. Plus, Tommy continued, you've been working yourself to death trying to pay for school and take care of your mom. This could be your chance to actually have a life instead of just surviving from one paycheck to the next. After work, Maya walked to the bus stop thinking about Tommy's words. She had been in survival mode for so long that she had almost forgotten what it felt like to think about the future with genuine hope instead of just determination. At home, Maya found her mother still awake, reading one of Maya's business textbooks. Mija, I've been reading about entrepreneurship, Elena said. Did you know that some of the most successful businesses are started by people who understand problems from personal experience? Maya sat down next to her mother. What are you thinking about, Mama? I'm thinking that you've spent 3 years learning about elderly care from the ground up. You know what works and what doesn't work because you've seen it firsthand. That's not something you can learn in a classroom. Elena closed the textbook and looked at Maya seriously. I'm also thinking that I've watched you sacrifice your own dreams to take care of our family's immediate needs. Maybe it's time for you to take a chance on those dreams. Maya hugged her mother tightly. I'm scared, Mama. What if this doesn't work out? Then, we'll figure out what comes next, just like we always do, Elena replied. But, Maya, what if it does work out? What if this is your chance to build the kind of life you've been working so hard toward? That night, Maya lay awake thinking about Mrs. Patterson, about her mother's medical bills, about the stack of textbooks on her desk, and about Richard Blackstone's unexpected offer. She thought about all the elderly clients at the community center who needed services they couldn't afford, and all the families like hers who were struggling to care for aging parents while making ends meet. Maya's first day at Blackstone Industries began at 8 a.m. in the company's downtown headquarters, a gleaming 40-story building that she had passed countless times on the bus, but never imagined entering as an employee. The lobby was impressive with its marble floors, modern art installations, and the quiet efficiency of well-dressed professionals moving purposefully through the space. Sarah Collins met Maya at the security desk and escorted her to the 32nd floor, where the new Community Services Division would be housed. Maya was surprised to discover that she would have her own office with a view of the city and a budget for furnishing and equipment. Richard wanted you to have space to think and plan, Sarah explained as she showed Maya around the office. He's very serious about making this division successful, and he knows that good work requires the right environment. Maya's first assignment was to spend 2 weeks visiting existing senior care facilities throughout the city, documenting their services, costs, and effectiveness. Richard wanted her to understand the current market before designing something better. The research was eye-opening in ways Maya hadn't expected. She visited luxury-assisted living communities that looked like 5-star hotels, with marble lobbies, gourmet dining rooms, and spa services. The monthly costs range from $8,000 to $15,000 per resident. These facilities are beautiful, Maya wrote in her research notes, but they serve less than 5% of the elderly population. For every person who can afford this level of care, there are 20 others who need support but can't access it. Maya also visited government-funded facilities that were clean and adequately staffed but institutional in feel. The residents received basic medical care and meals, but there was little attention to individual preferences or dignity. Most importantly, there were waiting lists of 6 months to 2 years for admission. The most heartbreaking visits were to substandard facilities that charged high fees for poor quality care. Maya found elderly residents sitting alone in sterile rooms, receiving minimal attention from overworked staff members who clearly cared but were overwhelmed by impossible caseloads. After each site visit, Maya interviewed family members about their experiences and challenges. The stories were remarkably consistent. Adult children struggling to balance caregiving responsibilities with their own jobs, and families, financial stress from unexpected medical costs, and guilt about not being able to provide better care for their parents. My father worked his whole life and saved every penny he could, one woman told Maya. 6 months in that nice facility wiped out his entire life savings. Now he's in a place that smells like disinfectant and treats him like a number instead of a person. Maya began to see patterns in the problems that existing services couldn't address. The luxury facilities were too expensive for middle-class families, while the affordable options were either unavailable due to waiting lists or provided substandard care. There was a huge gap in the market for quality services at reasonable prices. During her second week of research, Maya visited a small nonprofit program that operated out of a converted church building. The director, an energetic woman named Patricia Williams, had created a day program for seniors that provided social activities, meals, and basic health monitoring for $30 per day. We can keep our costs low because we use volunteers for many activities, and we don't have the overhead of a big facility, Patricia explained. But we're limited in what we can offer. We can't provide transportation or in-home services, and we don't have medical staff. Maya spent the entire day at Patricia's program, observing how the seniors interacted with each other and with the volunteer staff. The atmosphere was warm and family-like, completely different from the institutional feel of larger facilities. This is what we need to replicate, Maya wrote in her notes that evening. The personal attention and dignity of small programs, but with the resources and professional services that only larger organizations can provide. That night, Maya called Richard to discuss her observations. I think I'm starting to understand what we need to build, Maya said. It's not just about making services affordable. It's about making them personal and dignified. Tell me more about your thinking, Richard encouraged. Maya explained her idea for a hybrid model that would combine neighborhood-based service centers with in-home care, transportation services, and social programs. The key would be keeping overhead low while maintaining high standards of care. We could partner with existing community organizations like churches and community centers to provide space for day programs, Maya suggested. And we could train local residents to provide some of the services, creating jobs in the communities we serve. Richard was enthusiastic about Maya's approach. You're thinking like a true entrepreneur, Maya. You're seeing opportunities where others see only problems. I'm seeing the same problems I've always seen, Maya replied. I'm just starting to believe we might actually be able to solve some of them. Richard asked Maya to prepare a formal presentation of her findings for the following week. I want to share your research with our board of directors, he said. It's time to get official approval and funding for this project. Maya spent the weekend creating her first professional business presentation. She had never used presentation software before, but she threw herself into learning the technology while organizing her research into clear recommendations. On Monday morning, Maya arrived at the office to find Richard waiting with two other executives, his chief financial officer, Janet Morrison, and his head of operations, David Chun. Maya, I've asked Janet and David to review your research and help us develop a realistic budget and timeline, Richard explained. They'll be working with us to launch the Community Services Division. Maya was intimidated by the prospect of presenting to senior executives, but she reminded herself that she knew this subject better than anyone else in the room. She had lived the problems she was proposing to solve. Maya's presentation lasted 45 minutes and covered her market research, competitive analysis, service model recommendations, and preliminary budget estimates. When she finished, the room was quiet for several moments. Janet Morrison spoke first. Maya, this is impressive work. You've identified a real market opportunity that we never would have seen from our traditional perspective. David Chun nodded in agreement. The neighborhood-based model is smart. It addresses the transportation challenges that make senior services so expensive while building community connections. Richard smiled proudly. Maya, what you've designed isn't just a business plan. It's a solution to a social problem that affects millions of families. Over the following weeks, Maya worked with Janet and David to refine the business model and develop detailed financial projections. She learned about cash flow analysis, market sizing, competitive positioning, and operational planning, concepts she had studied in her textbooks but never applied to a real business situation. The experience was challenging but exhilarating. Maya discovered that she had an intuitive understanding of how to balance quality service delivery with cost control, largely because she understood both sides of the equation from personal experience. Maya, You have a natural talent for operational thinking, David observed during one of their planning sessions. You see the practical details that make the difference between a good idea and a successful business. Maya also began working with a human resources consultant to design job descriptions and compensation plans for the community services division. She insisted that all positions should pay living wages with benefits, remembering her own struggles to make ends meet on low-paying jobs. If we want to attract people who genuinely care about helping seniors, we need to pay them enough to focus on their work instead of worrying about their own bills, Maya argued successfully. 3 weeks after her initial presentation, Maya received unexpected news that would test her newfound confidence. Richard called her into his office for a private meeting. Maya, I need to prepare you for something difficult, Richard began. My son, Michael, and several board members have been expressing concerns about our new division. They think we're moving too fast and taking on too much risk. Maya felt her stomach drop. Are they going to cancel the project? Not if I have anything to say about it, Richard replied firmly. But they're demanding a formal review of our plans, and they want to interview you directly. Maya, they're going to try to intimidate you and make you doubt yourself. Maya took a deep breath. She had come too far to give up now. Mr. Blackstone, what do I need to do to convince them? Richard smiled at her determination. Just be yourself, Maya. Tell them what you told me about why this matters and how it can succeed. Your passion and knowledge are our strongest assets. The review meeting was scheduled for the following Friday in the main conference room on the 45th floor. Maya spent the week preparing additional research and practicing her responses to potential objections. On the day of the meeting, Maya wore her best professional outfit, a navy blue suit she had purchased with her first Blackstone Industries paycheck. As she entered the conference room, she was greeted by 12 board members, including Michael Blackstone, a man in his 40s who had his father's features but none of his warmth. Ms. Rodriguez, Michael said coldly, I understand you believe our company should enter the social services business. Can you explain why a profitable real estate development company should risk its reputation on charity work? Maya had expected this question, but hearing the dismissive tone still stung. She looked around the room at the skeptical faces and reminded herself why she was there. Mr. Blackstone, this isn't charity work, Maya replied calmly. This is a business opportunity that happens to solve social problems. The senior care market is growing by 15% annually because of demographic trends. We've identified an underserved segment that represents billions of dollars in potential revenue. Maya proceeded to present her market analysis, competitive landscape, and financial projections. She explained how the neighborhood-based model could achieve profit margins of 20 to 25% while charging prices that middle-class families could afford. Ms. Rodriguez interrupted another board member. You're proposing to hire local residents with minimal experience to provide care for vulnerable elderly people. How do we manage the liability risks? Maya had anticipated this concern as well. We would provide comprehensive training and certification for all care providers, partner with licensed medical professionals for health services, and maintain insurance coverage that exceeds industry standards. Our liability exposure would actually be lower than traditional models because we'd have better oversight through our neighborhood-based structure. The questions continued for 2 hours, covering everything from regulatory compliance to marketing strategies. Maya answered each question thoughtfully, drawing on the research she had conducted and the operational planning she had completed with Janet and David. When the formal questioning ended, Michael Blackstone leaned back in his chair and studied Maya for a long moment. Ms. Rodriguez, you're asking this board to approve a $5 million investment based on research conducted by someone with no business experience and no background in healthcare or senior services. Why should we trust you with that responsibility? Maya felt the weight of the room's attention, but she also felt the strength of her convictions. You shouldn't trust me because of my credentials, Maya said quietly. You should trust me because I understand the problems we're trying to solve in ways that credentials can't teach. I know what it's like to worry about affording care for a family member. I know what good service looks like and what poor service costs families. And I know that there are millions of people who need what we're proposing to build. Maya paused and looked directly at Michael Blackstone. Your father trusted me enough to give me this opportunity because I helped him when he needed it, without knowing who he was or what he could do for me in return. I'm asking you to trust that same instinct for helping people, because that's what will make this business successful." The room was silent for several long moments. Finally, Richard spoke up. "I'd like to call for a vote on approving the Community Services Division launch plan and budget." The vote was closer than Maya had hoped, 7 in favor, 5 opposed. But it was enough. 6 months after the board meeting, Maya stood in the community center where she used to work, but this time she was there as the director of Blackstone Community Services. The center had become the pilot location for their first neighborhood-based senior care hub, and Maya was preparing to cut the ribbon at their official opening ceremony. The transformation had been remarkable. Working with Patricia Williams from the nonprofit program, Maya had designed a service model that combined professional healthcare with community-based support. The center now offered daily social programs, nutritious meals, basic health monitoring, and coordination of in-home services for seniors throughout the neighborhood. "Maya, I can't believe how much has changed since you started working here," said Mrs. Patterson, who had become one of their first clients. She was walking without a cane now, having benefited from the physical therapy and meal programs that Maya had helped establish. "You've given me my independence back." Maya hugged Mrs. Patterson warmly. "You've given yourself your independence back. We just provided some support along the way." The opening ceremony was attended by over 200 people, seniors and their families, community leaders, and representatives from other service organizations who wanted to learn about the Blackstone model. Richard Blackstone was there, looking healthier than Maya had ever seen him, along with several board members who had initially opposed the project. "Ladies and gentlemen," Richard addressed the crowd. "6 months ago, a young woman who had never run a business convinced our board to invest in an idea that seemed impossible. Today, we're seeing the results of what happens when you combine genuine caring with smart business thinking." Richard gestured toward Maya. "Maya Rodriguez didn't just save my life when I collapsed in a cafe. She saved my faith in the possibility of doing business in a way that actually helps people." Today, Blackstone Community Services is serving over 300 seniors across 4 neighborhood locations, and we have plans to expand to 12 locations within the next year. Maya took the microphone feeling both proud and humbled by what they had accomplished together. "This program exists because of partnerships," Maya began. "Partnerships between families and professional caregivers, between nonprofit organizations and private businesses, between neighbors who look out for each other. We've proven that high-quality senior services don't have to be expensive if we're smart about how we deliver them." Maya looked out at the audience and saw familiar faces from her research visits, family members who had been struggling to find affordable care for their parents, seniors who had been isolated in their homes, and community volunteers who had found meaningful ways to contribute their time and skills. "But, most importantly," Maya continued, "we've proven that business can be a force for solving social problems instead of just creating wealth. When we focus on serving people's real needs, profit follows naturally." After the ceremony, Maya walked through the center observing the programs in action. In the main activity room, 20 seniors were participating in a chair exercise program led by a physical therapy assistant. The arts and crafts room buzzed with conversation as participants worked on projects they could take home to share with their families. The small medical clinic was staffed by a nurse practitioner who provided basic health services and coordinated with participants' primary care doctors. The meal program served lunch to 40 people daily, with additional meals prepared for home delivery to seniors who couldn't travel to the center. What impressed Maya most was the atmosphere of dignity and respect that pervaded every interaction. The seniors weren't treated like charity cases or medical problems to be managed. They were treated like valued community members whose experience and wisdom were assets to be shared. Maya's office was located within the center, so she could stay connected to daily operations while managing the administrative responsibilities of the growing organization. She had completed her business degree the previous month through an accelerated program that Blackstone Industries had arranged, allowing her to finish her coursework while gaining real-world experience. As Maya reviewed the day's reports, she was interrupted by a knock on her door. Elena Rodriguez entered carrying a small bouquet of flowers from her garden. "Mija, I wanted to bring these for your opening day," Elena said, placing the flowers on Maya's desk. I'm so proud of what you've built here. Maya stood up to hug her mother, reflecting on how much their lives had changed since that night at the cafe. Elena's diabetes was well controlled now thanks to the excellent health insurance that came with Maya's job. They had moved to a larger apartment in a safer neighborhood, and Elena had been able to reduce her working hours to focus on her own health and interests. Mama, I couldn't have done any of this without your support, Maya said. You taught me that helping people isn't just something nice to do. It's the most important thing we can do. Elena smiled and looked around Maya's office, which was decorated with thank you notes from clients and their families, certificates of appreciation from community organizations, and photos from various program events. You know what makes me happiest? Elena said. It's not the money or the success, though those things are wonderful. It's that you found a way to help people and take care of yourself at the same time. For too long, you thought those were opposites. That evening, Maya attended the monthly board meeting where she would present the quarterly results for Blackstone Community Services. The numbers were impressive. They were serving more clients than projected, operating costs were below budget, and client satisfaction scores were consistently above 90%. More importantly, they had demonstrated that the neighborhood-based model could be replicated successfully. The 4 pilot locations had different demographic profiles and community characteristics, but all were achieving similar results in terms of cost-effectiveness and service quality. Maya, these results exceed our most optimistic projections, said Janet Morrison, the chief financial officer. You've built something that's both financially sustainable and socially impactful. Michael Blackstone, who had been the most skeptical board member, raised his hand to speak. I want to acknowledge that I was wrong about this project. Maya, you've proven that business success and social responsibility aren't mutually exclusive. Maya appreciated Michael's honesty, though she also understood that his initial skepticism had pushed her to develop a stronger business plan than she might have otherwise. Thank you, Michael. I think the resistance we faced initially made us work harder to prove our model was sound. Sometimes the best ideas need to be tested by skepticism. Richard Blackstone looked around the table at his fellow board members. I want to propose that we accelerate our expansion timeline. Maya, how quickly could we scale to 20 locations? Maya had been hoping for this question. With proper planning and staffing, we could open 20 locations within 18 months. But I'd want to maintain our quality standards throughout the expansion. What would you need to make that happen? Richard asked. Maya pulled out a folder containing expansion plans she had been developing with David Chun. We'd need to hire and train approximately 60 additional staff members, establish partnerships with community organizations in 12 new neighborhoods, and secure appropriate facilities. The total investment would be approximately $15 million over the 18-month period. The board voted unanimously to approve the expansion plan. As the meeting concluded, Richard asked Maya to stay behind for a private conversation. Maya, I have something important to discuss with you, Richard began. I've been thinking about succession planning for Blackstone Industries. I'm 72 years old, and while my health is much better, I won't be running this company forever. Maya wasn't sure where this conversation was heading. I want to offer you the opportunity to become the chief operating officer for all of Blackstone Industries, with a clear path to eventually becoming CEO. You've demonstrated leadership, strategic thinking, and the ability to build profitable businesses that serve the community. Maya was stunned. Mr. Blackstone, I'm honored, but I'm not sure I'm ready for that level of responsibility. I've only been in business for less than a year. Richard smiled. Maya, you've already been operating at that level. You've built a division from scratch, convinced skeptical investors, managed complex partnerships, and delivered results that exceeded everyone's expectations. The only difference would be the title and the scope of responsibility. Maya thought about the offer carefully. What would happen to Blackstone Community Services? I don't want to abandon the people we're serving. The Community Services Division would continue to be your primary focus, but you'd also oversee our other business units to ensure they operate with the same values and community focus that you've brought to this project. Maya realized that Richard was offering her the opportunity to influence how business was done across a major corporation, not just within her small division. Can I have some time to think about this? Maya asked. Of course. But, Maya, I want you to know that this offer isn't about gratitude for what you did that night at the cafe. This is about recognizing the business leader you've become. That night, Maya walked through the neighborhood where their first community center was located, thinking about Richard's offer and reflecting on the journey that had brought her to this point. She passed the apartment building where Mrs. Patterson lived, the small houses where several of their home care clients resided, and the corner store where many of their program participants did their grocery shopping. This was the community that had taught Maya what good business could look like when it was designed to serve people's real needs rather than just maximize profits. These relationships had shown her that success could be measured in quality of life improvements, not just financial returns. Maya's phone buzzed with a text from Richard. Maya, whatever you decide about the COO position, I want you to know that you've already changed this company for the better. You've reminded all of us that business at its best is about serving others. Maya smiled as she read the message, thinking about how much had changed since that night, when she had simply done what felt right in helping a stranger who had collapsed in her workplace. She had learned that sometimes the most important decisions were made not through careful analysis, but through instinctive responses to situations where someone needed help. As Maya walked home to discuss Richard's offer with her mother, she reflected on the lesson that had guided her throughout this entire experience. When you focus on solving real problems for real people, success follows naturally. Whether she accepted the COO position or continued focusing solely on community services, that principle would continue to guide her decisions. Maya Rodriguez had started this journey as a young woman working 2 jobs to make ends meet. She was ending it as a business leader who had proven that profit and purpose could work together to create something meaningful. But, more than that, she had discovered that her instinct to help others wasn't just a personal quality. It was a professional strength that could drive innovation and success in ways that traditional business thinking couldn't achieve. The quiet young woman who had once told a collapsing billionaire to be quiet, and lie still had found her voice as a leader. And that voice was changing not just her own life, but the lives of hundreds of families who now had access to dignified, affordable care for their elderly loved ones. Maya's story had become proof that sometimes the most powerful business strategies begin with the simple decision to help someone who needs it, without thinking about what you might gain in return. In a world that often seemed to prioritize profit over people, Maya had built something that proved the two didn't have to be in conflict. As she reached her apartment building, Maya looked up at the city skyline, where the Blackstone Industries building stood illuminated against the night sky. Tomorrow, she would give Richard her answer about the COO position. But, tonight, she simply felt grateful for the unexpected journey that had transformed a moment of human kindness into an opportunity to make a lasting difference in the world. As the board members filed out of the conference room, Richard approached Maya with a smile. Congratulations, Maya. You just convinced some of the toughest business minds in the city to invest in your vision. Maya felt a mixture of relief and excitement, but also a new sense of responsibility. She now had the resources and support to build something that could help thousands of families. But she also had to prove that the trust placed in her was justified. Mr. Blackstone, Maya said, I promise you won't regret this decision. I already know I won't, Richard replied. Maya, you're about to learn that the real work is just beginning. By morning, Maya had made her decision. She was going to take the biggest risk of her life, and she was going to trust that her instincts about helping people would guide her through whatever challenges lay ahead. Maya called Richard at 8 a.m. before she lost her nerve. Mr. Blackstone, it's Maya Rodriguez. I'd like to accept your job offer. Maya, that's wonderful news, Richard said. And she could hear genuine happiness in his voice. I think we're going to build something truly special together. I hope so, Maya replied. I'm ready to work harder than I've ever worked in my life. I have no doubt about that, Richard said. Maya, welcome to Blackstone Industries. Your life is about to change in ways you can't even imagine. Overwhelming in the best possible way, but she also felt the weight of responsibility that would come with such an opportunity. Can I have some time to think about it? Maya asked. Of course, Richard replied. Take all the time you need. But, Maya, I hope you'll say yes. Not just because I think you'd be perfect for this job, but because I think this job would be perfect for you. As Maya prepared to leave, Richard handed her his business card with his direct phone number written on the back. "Call me when you've made your decision," he said. "And Maya, whatever you decide, thank you for reminding me what really matters in life." "I could come by during my lunch break tomorrow," Maya offered. "Around 12:30? That would be perfect. I'll make sure security knows you're coming. Just ask for Mr. Blackstone's room at the information desk." After hanging up, Maya sat on the bus wondering what Richard Blackstone wanted to say to her. She hoped he wasn't planning to offer her money as a reward. Maya hadn't helped him looking for payment. She had helped him because it was the right thing to do. During her accounting class that night, Maya had trouble concentrating. Her professor was explaining compound interest calculations, but Maya's mind kept drifting to the events at the cafe. She had always been taught that people were people, regardless of their wealth or status. But she was beginning to understand that not everyone saw the world that way. After class, Maya walked to the bus stop in the cool evening air. The city looked different at night. The office buildings were lit up, and well-dressed people hurried to expensive restaurants and entertainment venues. Maya sometimes wondered what it would be like to have enough money to eat dinner without checking prices on the menu first. But she didn't feel sorry for herself. Maya had goals, and she was working toward them every single day. Her current situation was temporary. Her degree would open doors to better opportunities, and, eventually, she would be able to provide a more comfortable life for her mother and herself. As the bus carried her home through the city streets, Maya thought about tomorrow's visit to the hospital. She was curious about what Richard Blackstone wanted to discuss, but, more than that, she was simply glad that she had been in the right place at the right time to help someone who needed it. Maya had learned long ago that life was unpredictable. Sometimes bad things happened to good people, and sometimes good people had opportunities to help others. What mattered was being ready to do the right thing when the moment came. She had no idea that tomorrow's conversation would change the entire direction of her life.